Everyone, welcome to the Sophron Network, the podcast where we bring together industry professionals to talk about everything that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Today I'm here with Aditya Shetty, who is responsible for Superteam Global. Which is the community network of Solana. Maybe you can tell a little bit more about yourself.
So I work with Superteam Global. Superteam helps ecosystem growth and community for the Solana blockchain. And if you haven't heard of it, Solana is the most performant and widely used layer 1 public blockchain. It is the sort of best way to understand it is that it's like technical and financial infrastructure for the future of capital markets. So we sort of like to say that our mission is internet capital markets, a successor to NASDAQ, where you can effectively, with a phone and an internet connection, participate in any asset, any market, no matter your location, your politics, or your investment size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you show me how you can get like a SpaceX stock basically 24/7, but then there's also a lot of like differences in sometimes you're getting the SpaceX stock, but you're not actually getting the stock. Can you tell us a bit more about like what you were telling me there about ownership and also like synthetics and mimicking sort of a stock? How does that work?
I think whenever historically anything has been democratized, initially you see a surge in volume because now anyone can do it. So it could have been videos with YouTube or e-commerce or anything else. Like once you can issue and access capital assets with a phone and an internet connection, and of course initially you had a lot of assets which are all price and no value. That's not the end state that we see for the ecosystem. And so you need investor protections. You do need to make sure that people know what they're buying, and then everyone can choose their own risk appetite and their own product of choice. For SpaceX in particular, I think in the last 6 months to a year or so, there have been many variants of tokenized equities or tokenized not equities or whatever you call it, be issued on various networks. There have been many versions of this on Solana. There have been other exchanges and other networks that have also brought in versions of stocks, mostly US equities. These are like synthetics or price exposure and things like that. That's not what happened with SpaceX on Solana. I think what I was sharing with you previously, and to your point, you mentioned, I don't know if you want to keep this in, but you mentioned you wish Elon Musk would ring the bell here one day. And I think the reason why he's ringing the bell in the NASDAQ right now is because it's the largest, most liquid capital market in the world. Our belief is that there is one capital market that is bigger than that, which is what we call internet capital markets, right? Like the largest pool of capital as of today is in the US capital markets, but there is a larger pool of capital on the internet. We just cannot coordinate in the same way yet that the US capital markets can. And our vision for Solana is to coordinate that capital market, right?
Yeah.
What's happened with SpaceX is that there is this company called Backpack. I actually just received a little merch from them. If you want to this is Backpack. This is
it's literally a backpack.
Thank you to Luca, I think, from the team who gave it to me today. And so what they have done is they've built a full stack product wherein they have a crypto wallet, which is a self-custodial wallet. They also have a centralized exchange, which is regulated across the world in various markets. And they have now, from what I understand, built Backpack Securities, which is a regulated securities brokerage, right? Which means that they can give you a full stack experience where you can custody the underlying share and have a tokenized version of it move seamlessly between your wallet, their exchange, and the brokerage. What that looks like for an everyday user is that you could buy SPCX, SpaceX on Solana, not financial advice. If you want to, you could buy it, withdraw it into the Backpack exchange, and then take it out into any other brokerage like Robinhood or anything else that you use. You could move it seamlessly because they have the underlying stock, right? This is sort of a first of its kind experience that they've built. And they chose to do it on Solana because, they launched with a partner called Sunrise, which could make sure that not just was the asset issued on the network, it was made liquid and available across all of the DeFi avenues. And so you get a competitive price for SpaceX on Solana as you would on any other exchange. And because, I'll end my point here, but because it is seamlessly on-off rampable and transferable across brokerages, there's a single liquid market for the asset effectively, right? Because if there's any price arbitrage, it's risk-free for anyone to go and arbitrage that price because you're always guaranteed to have the underlying security.
I think with decentralization, you also need a lot more education, no? The regular like retail user, like giving them exposure to all these assets is wonderful, but not if they have no clue on how they behave and how they should treat, right? Or invest, or how this all works.
That you like literally all you need is a phone and an internet connection, and there's like I think 5 billion phones out there in the world. Everyone has data which is getting cheaper and cheaper, and so it's sort of fundamentally different to say that whether you're in you could be anywhere in the world. You could be in Bombay, in Brazil, in Argentina, in South Africa. It could be anywhere in the world, and you can access the same price, the same asset. I think that is, sort of like unprecedentedly a different product. And I think that itself is a virtue. That access itself is a virtue worth protecting, right? The fact that people are often, in different inflationary regimes, they have access to limited, set of assets if they want to preserve their wealth. And the fact that there is sort of technology that in the best case allows an informed investor to access something they previously couldn't have without moving countries or without paying very expensive, interchange fees across the entire stack, is I think sort of a virtue that we should all fight for and preserve. Should investors be educated? Of course, like absolutely. I think that's non-contentious. And I think a lot of the exchanges, a lot of the regulated products in crypto and in Solana have taken that upon themselves to do it. So if you go to buy assets on a lot of centralized exchanges, they do have questionnaires, KYC, warnings, pop-ups and things like that they do present to test. Are you a beginner? Are you advanced? Are you intermediate? How much capital can you risk? What have you done in the past? And I think, but there's also the DeFi element to it, DEXs, which I think it basically comes down to what kind of a trust assumption do you make about your users? Because there's some apps which would say that, we just want to empower and give access, and we don't want to make a value judgment on whether you should or should not do this. Versus there are others which are a lot more controlled and protected.
Because in theory, right, like if everyone were to be educated and there would be like no bad actors, then fully democratizing every single asset would be nice, right? And you would have like always full sort of ownership and you know what you're buying. But you were also telling me there is a lot of like synthetics, right? And like also mimicking. Can you tell us a bit more about like how that works with like not owning, like you think you own SpaceX stock, but then something happens with the company where you bought it and they're like, oh no, you don't have any stock, you had something else.
Yeah. So I mean, it's inherently a different product. Like I think the teams issuing these assets have good intentions and they're just issuing a different kind of product that they are very transparent about. So it's not like a bait and switch or anything like that. Just to clarify, what they do is effectively, there is a market for price exposure to the stock without the underlying rights, right? There are people in many parts of the world today who, even if they are, let's say, bullish on a particular sector, let's say it's AI, it's electric cars, it's space flight, a lot of the best companies in all of these verticals are in one capital market today. And you may not have access to that based on the geography you're in or based on the asset size or like the investment size. You can make it, may not be viable for you to do it. And so people are okay to get price exposure to the asset. And so what teams have done is they've met that market need where they issue a synthetic that they sort of custody the underlying stock for you, and they issue a price tracker derivative product where you get, sort of price exposure. Now, in this case, of course, they are the trusted intermediary. And if something happens to them, you could end up risking your capital. They're sort of transparent about that, right? That's a version of the product that's available across whole bunch of venues. The same way now you have the real asset also come in, and so more choice is always good for customers, and they can sort of pick and choose which one they want. In the case of SpaceX, so far people seem to have preferred getting the underlying stock versus just getting the price exposure.
Yeah, and then from like a Solana perspective, right, Aditya, there's like a difference, and I also think like a lot of people are not aware. So like you have Sol, the token, like Solana, then you have like the financial layer, and then you also have like the whole like technology layer, right? Like there's basically these different pillars. Can you say a bit more about that? How you, for example, don't even need to have a token, but you can just use the infrastructure?
Yeah, I think effectively what it says that Solana is, technical and financial infrastructure. It's market infrastructure to give you whatever asset, whatever market you are interested in, right?
Yeah.
So of course, Sol is an asset, and that's a whole different thing. But take SpaceX for example. You don't need to have an opinion on Sol, the asset, to be able to access SpaceX on Solana. Right? You can, if you can be agnostic, bullish, bearish, whatever your opinion is on Sol, you can still access 24/7 SpaceX stock on the Solana network through the Backpack exchange or through a whole dozen selection of wallets and dexes that use the Solana blockchain. Both the fast and cheap settlement and transaction like capability, but also the liquidity infrastructure, the market makers, the order routing, and all of the other things that are on the blockchain. So I think more and more, I think the next avenue for growth is literally any asset, any version of any asset that people want. We would like for it to be available on the network through any of the apps that are built today or will be built in the future. And those apps do need to, comply with regulation, especially if they are, custodying user funds or they're operating in that fashion.
So with every asset, you don't mean anything, right?
Markets can sort of decide where their focus and their sort of tolerance level is. But I think there's a place for everything from meme coins to tokenized gold, bonds, currencies, commodities, stocks, all on the same giant liquid ledger and liquid market. And then of course, some assets are more valuable than others. I don't think that's sort of controversial to say. And as the infrastructure proves itself out, we'll see the asset quality go up over time. And people are free to trade meme coins if they want to. They're free to trade SpaceX if they want to. They can trade, commodities, so whatever they want.
Yeah. Then again, like I was also wondering, just in general, like with this whole like on ramping, off ramping, and everything, where does like exchange? Because like they eventually, like if you can basically go now and buy, let's say 10,000, like a large amount, 10,000 shares of SpaceX stock, and you go and like, and it converts, or does that like also have like the limited, you cannot probably trade that, right? Like there's also, they have a limited amount of shares, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so you would basically mint, they'd mint 1:1. So they would have their own inventory and you may be sort of like restricted to that today.
Yeah.
The bet is that as more products come in, as the ecosystem matures, that would basically would like eat up the entire market and you'd have everything available either on a traditional brokerage or on a digital version of that on Solana. Right.
Yeah.
But to answer your question on how arbitraging, pricing, etc. works, there's I think a bunch of market makers, prop AMMs that quote prices on Solana. And because it's one giant liquid market, it's very easy even to just programmatically arbitrage out any differences. And then there is a whole range of fees that trading venues charge. So if you trade inside a wallet, they may have their own fee because they're bringing the custody premium, versus there are dexes or dex aggregators that don't charge any fees in spot trades. So that can vary just as it would for any other interface that you use.
Yeah. So from my understanding, like you could basically, like with the non-arbitrage or no arbitrage condition, you could basically start to see that all the volume goes to like these internet capital markets, but then eventually it gets like off ramp to like the real like asset, and then it gets sold through like your regular exchange.
It could. I mean, I'm
so
curious
in theory,
if the Backpack team. Sorry, go ahead.
So
there's a few interesting use cases, and again, this is all very new. Like the first time this has happened is on Friday, right? So we'll see how it goes. But I'd say a few things. One is that let's say you wanted to trade through the weekend. You could do it on Solana, and you could on-off ramp, and during market hours trade here, during after market hours trade on Backpack or on Solana. The second thing is that your tokenized SpaceX shares are composable with all of Solana DeFi, which means that you can, or you very soon will be able to borrow against them, carry out advanced DeFi strategies against them, stake. There's all of this other DeFi stuff that exists can just plug in seamlessly. And so there could be cases where people buy it traditionally, and yes, you can also pledge your shares and get a mortgage from, get a loan from your brokerage, but you may choose to on-ramp them into a DeFi ecosystem purely to carry out more advanced and riskier strategies if that is your user profile.
And then someone would get it, for example, on the internet capital markets like Solana. They would then like plug it into their exchange wherever that is, and then
the asset is freely sort of composed.
So it's almost like a layer on top of all that. And it's kind of and then we'll wrap it up, but like it's mainly tailored around like the whole like Superteam model, which is more like community building, right? And you see like these days with also like social media and such and everything, and also in crypto, it's a lot more like community driven. You have these like super teams like all around the world that are building like various products and companies and talking about Solana, working on Solana. But you see that more not only with Solana. So do you sort of see that that could be something that like the future is going towards, where, for example, like SpaceX is just like also a very large like marketing push, and people want to own SpaceX because they believe in Elon. So like investing is becoming almost more like community driven. You must also see that, right, with Superteam, like that people are building products and like talking about them and like using Solana.
Yeah, so I think but it's sort of fundamentally different from retail or sort of community oriented trading, because Superteam was built on the insight that if you say that Solana is neutral technical and financial infrastructure, you want to organize productive community that is building using the infrastructure. And so it was never we've never sort of focused on traders or investors. We've more focused on people who want to use the infrastructure to build apps that can then reach whatever audience they want to reach. So it's sort of a fundamentally different kind of community. From the SpaceX asset point of view, it's like now if you're a fintech builder anywhere in the world, you now have access to a world-class asset without needing to go through the hassle of setting up your own brokerage, because you have a tokenized version of it that anyone can withdraw and put into a brokerage that is already regulated. So I think that's more the focus of Superteam. That's not to say that traders and retail is not important, but I think it's just not our focus area. So
do you see a lot of people building these kind of like, where is the focus now with Superteam? What kind of apps are people building most? Is it like exchanges like these, or is it real world assets? Is it tokenization?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's basically everything. It's literally like people are doing payments, people are doing privacy, infrastructure, real world asset issuance, new kind of investment products, including social investing and things like that. So it's, again, one of the core principles we hold is that we sort of follow the market instead of try to lead it. And you can, of course, say that here are the things you can do with it. Here are the capabilities available, resources available. But ultimately, the best part about a bottoms up community is that people do what they do. And then if it works, if it passes the test of the market, it works. If not, it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I think that's very interesting also in general, just to see how sort of communities are forming like these kind of initiatives together. And I think it's good that you're guiding and not really like pushing them to start building all these models. So thank you so much for joining today. Anything you still want to share, Aditya?
I'd just close out with saying that, the end state or the vision that we are working towards, that everyone in the Solana ecosystem works towards, is that all you need is a phone and an internet connection, and you can access world-class capital markets products. And we want to reimagine everything, from investor protection, KYC, access products around that new reality. And I think that has a place for everyone and anyone that sort of buys into that vision.
Yeah, and I also think the bridge is super interesting. That like I didn't see it first, but just like the whole connection between TradFi and DeFi, that it's not like both are clashing, but it's only going to work if like both parties work together. Like we went from like the VOC times with sending out chips and then getting rewards back to now talking about like a unified like large market with
it's pretty poetic to be having the discussion here.
Much for joining, and yeah, I hope Superteam can build amazing things and provide the infrastructure that everyone wants.
You're a Superteam member now, so you can all do it together.
Yeah, right. See you guys at the next one. If you want to get more insights, don't forget to follow us on our socials, and yeah, we'll see you next time during the following episode. Thank you.